Welcome home.
1 2 1 2.
Yes.
We back. Happy Monday, y'all.
Glorious Monday.
Yeah.
Market Monday.
Indeed
A lot to talk about, man.
Indeed
There's a lot going on. A lot going on in the world. We have a special guest that will be joining us. Senator Tim Scott.
You don't say.
From South Carolina. Republican, our first Republican on the program. So I'm sure that'll be a very interesting conversation.
I guess they heard us loud and clear.
For sure. So
right at time.
We'll be talking about some policy. We'll be talking about, a variety of different things. But before we start, okay, this is it.
You know what it is.
The last call for alcohol.
you know what time it is.
This is the last call if you're at the bar. InvestFest starts Thursday, actually, registration. But this weekend coming, Atlanta, Georgia. Man, I mean, do I really have to go through this again? Like, how many times, man? The legendary 50 Cent is the headliner.
Yep.
We'll have Shannon Sharp there, VIP night, Steve Harvey, T.I., Stephen A. Smith, Damon John, Lauren London, Don Peebles, Monica, Earn Your Leisure, Ian Dunlap, will.i.am, Van Jones, Pinky Cole, Wyclef Jean, 19 Keys, Billy Carson, Shaka Bars, YK Awaken, Derek Hayes, Terrence J, Kenny Burns, Milan Harris, Matthew Garland, D1, Queen of Fool, Jim Jones, the Marathon team, Black Sam, JP, the whole team will be there. Man, Dr. Bobby Price, Alex Burton, Larry Marlowe, Poor Minds. The list goes on, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a hell of a lineup.
Microsoft,
Fidelity Investments,
iShares by BlackRock.
Yep.
BlackRock.
Fidelity Investments.
Got Hefe in the building.
Home Buyers Workshop. Investing 101, artificial intelligence, everything you need to know. Man, this is it, man.
Don't forget, we're gonna close it out with R&B. So,
I can't wait.
After parties, man. This is going to be a moment.
It's here.
The great city of Atlanta.
It's here.
Get your tickets. It's the last run. InvestFest.com. Get your VIP tickets. We're gonna be turning up with Shannon Sharp on VIP night, and Monica's gonna be singing, and T.I. is gonna be there, and Poor Minds and Mandy B. We're gonna set it off right. So get your tickets, and then also shout out to Reform.
Yes.
They did this last year. They're coming back this year. Reform is giving away 100 general admission tickets to InvestFest.
Oh, that's fire.
First come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
And how you get it is that you go to the website and at checkout, enter code Reform. You enter code Reform at checkout. First 100 people to do it, that's going to be going in 3 minutes. So shout out to everybody that's going to be participating in the Nipsey Hussle Business Grant pitch competition. Looking forward to that. And then we got the 50 walk-ins. If you wasn't chosen, first 50 on the walk-in, you still have an opportunity to pitch, even if you were not selected out of the first 100. So that's that.
What time is that for them?
What time?
Yes.
I believe the competition starts at 1. So the judges will be opening the doors at 1 for the contestants to come in. So there's
y'all better get there at 10.
Yeah, I would be there, but way before that. Because you know what? You know why you get there early? Because you never know who's walking in the halls. You never know who's in that market. You just never know who you're going to run into. And that could give you a little piece of advice or help you out with your pitch. You just never know. And I'm sure people that are pitching are going to be talking to each other, right? Because everybody's feeling that same angst. Everybody's feeling that sense of nervousness. And so having somebody that's about to go through the same process that you're going through always helps out in these situations. So get there early.
Yeah. And learn the flaws in their pitch so you can turn your pitch.
Like, all right, I ain't gonna do that.
Oh, I see what you did. Mistake.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So man, it's a lot putting this together. So it's good that it's here. I will say this. Thursday is registration. If you live in Atlanta or if you're in Atlanta, please go to GWCC building on Thursday to register. And that way you can get your credentials and everything. You'll be good for the weekend. And then Friday, the InvestFest actually starts on Friday. It doesn't start on Saturday. It starts on Friday. From Friday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning all the way to 6 o'clock at night, we have programming, panels on artificial intelligence, investing. So please get your money's worth on the vendor marketplace is open on Friday. So Friday, it actually starts on Friday. So get your credentials on Thursday and please be there on Friday. That's a lot of education will be taking place on Friday. And then of course, VIP night Friday night, and all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then we're gonna vibe out R&B only. It's just the whole vibe. But Thursday registration, Friday morning start.
Yeah, we'll be there Friday. Y'all gonna see it. There's a guarantee that you're gonna see it. So Friday, I'll definitely be there. I want to talk to all the vendors. I like talking to them before they get that mass crowd in. So I'll get there early just to talk to them, let them see how they feeling, let them know if it's their first time, what they should experience, and then I want to see the presentations because that's like a big part of it. Like a lot of people put a lot of time into their booths. And so I like seeing that. I'm like, all right, they coming serious with it. So it's the quiet before the storm because that's exactly what's going to be. It's going to be. It is Black Wall Street encompassed in one space, man. So it's an exciting time. I can't wait to get there.
Oh, food trucks! Make sure you go to the food trucks. Put that video on Instagram yesterday. A lot of people didn't even know there was food trucks last year. Support Black businesses, all Black owned food trucks.
Yes,
it's a lot of money being pumped into the economy, and that's not talked about enough either. Because I saw it was crazy because we did the food truck review, and shout out to Jack. He's one of the biggest food critics on Instagram. He has like 1 million followers on TikTok, maybe more. So he's white, and he did. So somebody was like, "Well, you couldn't find anybody from the culture to do a food review." Well, the thing about it is that you look past the 15 food trucks that were actually owned by Black people, right? So it's like when you do an event like this, because I'm tying this into the 50 Cent Hurricane Chris thing. When Hurricane, a lot of time, I know most of the time, you know what people's favorite word is in the dictionary, in the human language, what everybody's favorite
word?
that's the word of the month.
So everybody's, for the most part, the majority of people on earth, their favorite word in life is their name, right? And I realized that, everybody's top priority is themselves, but sometimes you have to take yourself out of it, right? Just because you were not highlighted doesn't mean that hundreds, if not thousands of people actually benefit from these type of events. So the Hurricane Chris thing, I just think that was irresponsible for him to say, because it's like, okay, he might not have highlighted any Shreveport, Louisiana artist. I don't know how many there are, but look at all of the hundreds, if not thousands of jobs that were there for the weekend, from security to janitorial jobs to you name it. And look at all of the small businesses that benefited greatly, from restaurants to tobacco shops to clothing stores, you name it. Look at all of the hospitality that benefited greatly for the weekend. Promoters, after parties, brunches. So there's no way that nobody has. Who else did an event in Shreveport, Louisiana? So when you bring in 30,000 people to a city that you don't even have a direct flight, there's not even a direct flight from New York to Shreveport, Louisiana. So, I mean, that has to increase the economy, right? So it's like, okay, if Taylor Swift does a concert there, is she required to bring a Shreveport? I've never heard anybody say, yo, Taylor Swift can't come back here because she didn't bring a Shreveport, Louisiana artist. I've never heard that. They just do their concert and they go about their day, right? So it's just like when you do these type of events, the economic impact for the city that the event is in is tremendous. And so many people benefit from it. And like I said, a lot of times people don't fully understand that, because I know that their number one priority is themselves. And they're looking at it like, well, if I didn't benefit from it, then screw it. But that's not really the best way to go about it, because you're actually blocking blessings of thousands of other people if that event gets moved. If that event doesn't happen in Shreveport, Louisiana anymore, now what happens to the economy for that week, right?
Yeah, I think even bigger what he's doing is the impact that it's having that week, but the infrastructure that he's leaving to continue that economy to grow. Like the studio is there. The purpose of it was to show everybody the studio that they're building, so that this is now a place that you can come. So it's like the kickoff, but the infrastructure and the jobs that are left behind, the hospitality that's going to be increased because people will be going down there to now shoot, right? How many people are going to say, like, this is now an opportunity? We saw it happen in Atlanta with Tyler Perry Studios. Yep. What 50's doing here in the Street Boy is pretty much identical, if not very similar to it. The infrastructure that's going to happen for years to come and the money that's going to be generated for years to come, how do you even measure it? So, I mean, people are very short-sighted.
But just think about that. Shreveport, Louisiana, New York City is the largest city in America. Shreveport, Louisiana does not have a direct flight to New York, right? So logistically, to bring 30,000 people into, it's not even a secondary market. You're looking at a fourth to fifth tier market, right? That within itself is an extremely impressive feat. you got to get a connecting flight from Dallas, Atlanta. Like, I don't think people fully understand. Like, it's not. They probably don't even have enough
what it
hotels
takes
to house that many people that came in. So be mindful, ladies and gentlemen. There's always going to be a critic, but most people that criticize have not done anything. That's what I realized in life.
Yeah.
You have to want to see opposed to critiquing. Hurricane Chris, I like you, but come on, like 50 not the road. You can't tell him he can't go somewhere. I don't know if you know about his track record, but pretty flawless to being able to move around.
It was ill-advised. But all right, Ian, any announcements?
Get your tickets to InvestFest. I'm excited. Presentation is in, slides are in. Cannot wait. Going to put on the show. If you want to get rich from the market, go to ianinvest.com. If you want to know the best stocks to invest in, over 90 prices of where to get in, whether it's short term, long term, or on the option side. Stocks to stay away from, some trading tips. We had an amazing call last night, so go to ianinvest.com. I will see you guys there this week. I'm looking forward to Blackout Live. I will be in the vendor marketplace with Troy and Rashad early. Yeah, I may even pop up at the pitch competition just to show support. So I'm excited. I'm like super excited about this. If I made you money, please put yes in chat. Let's have an amazing show. And my phone is off. My phone don't work. I don't have enough money for my T-Mobile bill. I'm sorry. After the day, nope. Don't hit Ty, AB, nobody. Nope. Yeah, you can't help. Buy your tickets. Panda 20 is the code. If you're in Red Panda, hey, don't say I do nothing. Get 20% off.
Panda
Go buy
20.
your tickets.
Panda 20 is a code to get 20% off. Red Panda affiliate link.
The only place that exists.
All right.
For real.
That's a fact. That's a fact. I'm with you.
You beat Tabiti, Milan, Steve Harvey, 50. No.
Fact.
No.
And I don't have them.
150,000.
When you see us, we don't have them on us, so like that won't be an opportunity either. I don't have tickets on me. We don't carry tickets.
That's
on
the last thing.
So please, hold on. So please, because that has happened in the past. This is not the opportunity now to say, yo, how can I get in? Can I? If we're on stage, like, and people will do this, like they'll look at the time and they'll say, oh, those guys, I didn't want to bother them, but let me just
Saturday at 3.
Yeah, we on stage, bro. Like we getting emails while we on stage. Text me on stage, yo, bro. I'm about to come through. I'm in the park. I can't help you at that point.
There will be no tickets sold at the venue. So your last opportunity to buy tickets will probably be Thursday. So please do not. It's not a walk up. You can purchase a ticket. All tickets will be sold virtually. All tickets will be sold virtually. There's no opportunity to buy a physical ticket. Disclaimer.
Y'all know how this works, man. This is the disclaimer. Do your own research. Our content is intended to be used and must be used for informational purposes only. It's very important to do your own analysis before making any investment based on your own personal circumstances. You should take independent financial advice from a professional in connection with, or independently research and verify any information that you find on our show and wish to rely upon, whether for the purpose of making an investment decision or otherwise. People continue to do the research, continue to share the research. Let's grow. Let's have our brokerage accounts grow. Let's share information. Let's keep going. Let's win. Let's win.
Let's go.
Okay. So did Starbucks make the right decision by selecting Brian Niccol as the new CEO?
Absolutely. Amazing CEO. For those who don't know, he was a chief marketing officer over at Yum. He helped turn around Taco Bell. Amazing. And he's very interesting because he's a great operator, penny pincher on the operation side, but he has a marketing brain. So like if you put Tim Cook's mind on the operation side with Steve Jobs, I'm not saying he's a combination of Tim and Steve, it's just an analogy, but very rarely do you get an executive who has both. Usually a person may be good at the visionary ideas, but not the accounting side. He has both. We can't argue with what he did for Chipotle. I think it's interesting that he not only in the negotiation package, amazing deal, but to operate it from California and work from home. It's a great lesson to create so much leverage for yourself in your career that when you go to another institution, you can make your own rules. I think Starbucks has gotten too comfortable. The lines too long, too much variety and choice. We have to, at one point, Starbucks was a luxury brand. And I don't know if they're that anymore. They lost some of their cachet. We'll talk about Google later, but right now, as inflation has went up, some of these brands have lost what made them special. And I think what he can do is bring some of that lore back into the building. And hopefully over the next year and a half, the stock was Starbucks still one of the top picks in Stock Club. But I think with him being as an executive, the stock definitely should go up 50% over the next 2 years.
Yeah,
amazing hire though, because I was worried for a long time about what they were going to do.
I think it's a 5-star hire. I'm with you. I
Absolutely.
think it's an incredible hire. If you look at the track record inside of the food enterprise economy, he's been at the forefront of a lot of stuff. Like you said, it goes back to Taco Bell, 2011. Here's what I'm going to just tell you what he's done. Right, he changed the menu, innovated on that, created breakfast opportunities for them, upgraded the restaurant cooking equipment and dining rooms, and also introduced mobile ordering. So this is 2011, right?
Yes.
Way ahead of the curve, right? This is before a lot of the brands are doing that. 2018, he takes over Chipotle as a CEO. At the time, like we could probably remember, this is right before we even started Earn Your Leisure, but they had that food outbreak where the food was contaminated, stock was plummeting, right? Yep. He takes over. He starts a new protocol for safety. He modernized the chain ordering. And then he changed ingredients. And so we saw it went from maybe just 2 items at Chipotle to now you see a plethora of different things. I think about 7 different items that you can now choose from. And then he increased locations. In that time from 2018 till, well, he leaves effective September 9th this year, Chipotle stock has doubled. So we're talking about somebody who has a proven track record in this space. I think it's a 5-star hire, especially for a company like Starbucks, who we've seen. I mean, they just took a hit last quarter. But it's not a legacy brand, but it's one of these strong brands inside of, I would call it e-commerce / food enterprise, right? Because the mobile ordering part is so key and vital to both businesses.
Absolutely.
Chipotle we saw, but Starbucks, that was one of the things when we were trying, like, what's some of the setbacks that they have? It's been a terrible experience for a lot of people when they order. So this is like one of his key points. He saw it at Taco Bell. He did it with Chipotle. Now let's see what he can do with Starbucks. I think it's a great hire.
Yeah, for an analogy, it's like when Phil wanted to go coach Kobe and Shaq. It's like change is going to come, championship on the horizon. And we have to remember, he's one of the last executives that is a superstar that's not in tech. Like, to give you the order of magnitude, and Chipotle now has a tough job of finding a replacement for him. Very tough to find an executive to replace him. So Starbucks would do a lot better. And in each of those instances too, he made the order time a lot faster. Like, one thing that Starbucks has been struggling with, the average wait time in Starbucks now is 9.5 minutes. For you to have all the food prepackaged, why is it taking so long?
For a lemon cake and a croissant.
Yeah, and a cake pop. It's like, why is it taking so damn long? So I'm excited about, and I think he's going to provide some excitement back into the culture, into the building. And I think the biggest lesson here, though, is find a way to provide value. And then if a brand is struggling, be so valuable to wherever you're at that another company will give you whatever you want to come and work there. Same thing for you guys walking around at the vendor marketplace. If you can help vendors make more sales, like, we'll talk about the networking tips later, but what can you do to increase value immediately that day? Day one, when it gets in, I promise you we're going to see some changes positively at Starbucks.
That's going to be the expectation. Yeah, and he's relatively 50 years old.
Yeah, he's young.
We're talking about a younger CEO.
Yeah. So, okay. So what do you feel about the compensation package?
Can I break down the compensation?
Please do.
All right, so let's do it by the numbers. All right, so first, $1.6 million per year. This is his initial base salary, 23% more than his Chipotle salary last year. $10 million. Keep these numbers in order. All right. This is his sign-on bonus, part of which is meant to cover cash incentives, awards, and equity that he would have vested within the year at Chipotle. Big number. 75 to 80 million. This is a one-time equity replacement grant that will be spaced out over 3 years to cover any value in Chipotle stock that Brian Niccol gave up to join Starbucks. And then he has some other cash, annual cash that comes from stock awards and also part of the arrangement. So we're talking, what's that? Oh, nearly 100? Nearly 100 million?
Yeah.
Nearly 100 million.
So for everyone, That's the word of the day, leverage, right? I think you have to be so great at what you do. And can we be very honest? Those that are the best at what they do get paid the most. So at a time when Starbucks needed a CEO and Howard couldn't come back for the third time and save the company, can you deliver a win when it's needed, when inflation is up, when the fanfare around Starbucks has not been the highest? They have a couple of political issues and a couple corporate issues to fix. The money goes to the person who has the leverage, who has the most talent to bring the best result. So has a proven track record. I think it's an amazing deal. And at a time when they were floundering, I think the superstar will get paid the most. Like, the thing that I want everyone to take away from this, find a way to carve your own path to get paid this kind of money for what you're best in the world at. Get your tickets to InvestFest. There'll be a lot of people who are best in the world at their craft to hear them speak.
So, okay. So is Starbucks a company that people should put on their watch list to buy?
Absolutely. I've been positive on it the last 5 or 6 years. In Stock Club, it's definitely not top 15 for sure. So I would definitely put it on your watch list. But I want to see what his first 90-day plan is, or what the vision is for like the first year. But once he gets into office, a positive change is going to come. I'm very bullish on this as a result.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any small cap stocks or futures you're eyeing for potential pullback on quadruple witching September 20th, 2024? First, can you explain what quadruple witching is?
Yeah, quadruple witching is like when future stocks, options all expire. I think it's a great question, but I have to stress, stop focusing on short-term horizons for a quick gain when you're going to miss tremendous upside. When we had to drop the middle of this month, that was the buying opportunity for a lot of stocks. I don't see a lot of small cap or mid cap stocks outperforming large cap for the time being. Now, we'll talk about Ulta later. I like them, ELF, but there aren't many in the Russell 2000 that are going to outperform AMD, TSM, ASML, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple. And I wish there were more. Like, I was going down the list trying to find 2 that I love, but going back to my rule, like, if I had to put my life on the line, I can't find right now a mid-cap company or Russell 1000 or Russell 2000 company that I think is going to outperform by that short time frame. So biggest lesson, write this down, focus on the long-term gains. Even if you need a win, even if you need the 25% to pay off a bill or what, no, you have to focus on the long term. Quad witching, we will get some things reset, but I think the ones that are top 15 now are still going to move the market the most. You may have an outlier that may grow 25%, but also keep your eye out on if Buffett puts in a bid to buy Intel. That would be a great reversal for sure.
Well, speaking of Buffett and Ultra, so Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, they backed Ulta.
Beauty.
So is it investors' best interest to start adding beauty retail to their portfolios?
I've been screaming this. I've been
talking about listening
every 2 weeks. Yes. Like, if you don't have a baddie, put what the baddies buy in your portfolio. I've been telling you about ELF, Ulta for the longest time. The cosmetic space is heating up. And these brands have performed incredibly well, not on the sales side, but also on a profit margin side. Like, I may be a little bit more biased towards ELF, but there's a few that we've talked about. Like Troy said, I don't think people have listened. So in times of recession, there are a couple of areas in which spending does not slow. The cosmetics area is one of them. There's been a lot of innovation there. Great leadership is not talked about because it's not a chip manufacturer, but Ulta, ELF, I definitely like. There's been a few that we've talked about, but I will put them on your watch list and then wait to pull back.
We done carried this conversation for like 2 years now. Even during the pandemic, it was one of those things where beauty and cosmetics is going to see an uptick because people are home. People are just doing people are watching TikTok and they're watching Instagram and they're getting tutorial ideas and people are spending. Like I know my daughter is now become one of these TikTok, they like, I want to try this. I got to go to Sephora, or I got to go to Ulta to get this product. And so it's a huge thing. I think the interesting thing in the deepest story is it said that the report was Berkshire Hathaway revealed that they purchased over at least 691,000 shares during the second quarter, worth $266 billion. And so if you look at the second quarter range of the stock at its peak, it was like April 1, it was at $529. At its low, it was at $385. And so let's say he bought at the tail end. We talked about people, when should we enter a stock? When is that percentage? And we've gone back and forth, you and I, for sure, where I'm like, maybe it's 25 to 30%. I know you like to go to 40%. But if he hit it at the low, then he literally did a 25% drop from its high. Right. So
absolutely.
So this is like everything that we've been saying. You're now watching one of the greatest investors.
Him doing it in real time.
If not the greatest investor of all time, doing it in real time. The second quarter range was from 529. You take 25% of that. That's about 397. Let's say he got it around that area. It went down. That announcement came out. Obviously, it didn't happen in real time. We don't know what they do in the quarter. We just see what happens after the quarter. But yeah, you saw it tick right back up to 384. And so that's right back at that 29% loss from his 52-week high. So he's buying solid companies at discounted prices. What's the percentage? Discount. He's doing 25 to 30%, if not higher. It's the same thesis that we've been saying. So that's interesting to watch because you're now seeing the greatest investor do it himself in real time.
One of the greatest tricks that Buffett ever pulled is acting like he doesn't know how to trade. Like that whole team in Omaha, there's some sharks over there, man. Like, but just to focus on long term and not share the secrets of timing, the 25% off, he got back in at a 2022 price, avoided those highs that are definitely pushed back up to the 550s. If I was Tim Cook, I would be shaking in my boots though. You better go call Omaha right now. Whatever little issues y'all have, you better repair. Because then you realize too, and everyone keep asking why did he sell? Why did Soros sell NVIDIA? The purpose of investing is to buy it at a low price and then sell it at a peak so you can lock in profit. You don't want to keep hoping that new mountaintops and new highs are made. Yes, you may have higher highs, but if you're in something and you get 40 or 80% return, I mean, he bought this, like you said, at an amazing price. So at the 2022 level, the only previous area where he could have got it in was probably like 290. That was a 2020 level. Like they bought it at a great price. Got a great deal on it. It's going to push to the upside. And it was probably the deepest discounted makeup brand that was available at the time as well.
Yeah. If you look at this chart, I mean, you can just see it. The second quarter, you can see the decline. But again, if you believe in a strong company, then you look for the points of entry. Even NVIDIA, right? If you're talking about George Soros, him selling it, he sold it at a peak. We saw it go down to 91. It's at 127 again. You got to take profit, let it pull back, and I'm sure when it got down to 91, you'll see probably the second quarter filings. Next quarter, you'll see it.
You'll see
people, they got 200,000 shares, 500,000 shares. We'll see what Nancy Pelosi did. But I'm sure
she made it kill. She probably made it clean 45 million already.
I'm sure they figured out a way to seize on that moment.
The best investors buy at the best prices over and over again. Like we try and make this hard. Wait for a 20 or 25% discount or 40% discount and buy.
That's a fact. We definitely told you about the bottoms of a few companies. But one thing I forgot, virtual. Get your virtual ticket if you can't make it in person, investfest.com. We have VIP night option this year too. So virtual.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We never done that before, but the VIP night's a vibe. Especially with the musical performances and everything. So I wanted to kind of give people a look into that world if they're interested. So if you can't make it, that's another option. So
my guy Billy literally asked me last night. I was like, I don't know. I got to talk to Rashad and Troy today. So thank you for that.
The virtual options, and you can watch it from the comfort of your own home. But okay. Without further ado, we have our guest. Can we bring him up? How's it going,
gentlemen? How are y'all?
Good. How you doing?
How you feeling?
Yeah, thank God. Doing really well. No complaints today.
Okay. Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. So I'm going to be honest with you. We've had a lot of politicians on. We've interviewed the vice president. we have never spoken to a Republican before, so you are the first.
We don't want this to shock you.
Hallelujah.
This might be breaking news, but yes, it's true.
But we actually had made it a point that we wanted to kind of, speak to Republicans because it's important to get, both sides of the story, right? So
absolutely.
No pressure, but you are representing the whole party. For sure.
You might have a problem with it, but that's okay with me.
Senator, is it possible to turn your volume up a little bit?
Yeah, let me do that.
Okay.
How's that? Is that any better?
Yeah.
Let me check on our end if we can anything we can do.
I'll put that.
He raised it. Perfect. Mike raised it. All right. So okay. So it's a few questions that. All right. Let's get into. First and foremost, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. So on the economic side, Donald Trump had referenced that he worked with you on opportunity zones. A few times I saw that. He said that you're an integral part in the opportunity zone. So a lot of people still are not familiar with opportunity. Like they heard of it, but they don't really know what it is or how people have benefited from it. So since you were a part of it, can you kind of explain your work in the opportunity zones and where does that stand currently?
Sure. So number one, let me just, I always say that the why is more important than the what. And so for me, the why was, I grew up in a single parent household, mired in poverty in North Charleston, South Carolina. And one of the things I recognized as a lawmaker was that so often opportunities were elusive for us who lived in the wrong zip code. And so when I designed the Opportunity Zone project, it was designed around the why. I felt like if I could bring the resources back to the community, more kids who were smarter than I would have more opportunities than I had when I was growing up. And so the why Opportunity Zones were even created was because I understood personally, watching some of the smartest people I've seen on the planet, we just lived in the wrong zip code. If I could help those kids be empowered to make the difference in their own lives and their mama's lives, then the world would be a better place because these kids deserve the greatest access that anybody else I've seen. And too many of them had too few opportunities. So that's the why behind Opportunity Zones. Opportunity Zones did two things, basically. Number one, it gave two incentives to those who had capital to take a look at the hardest hit economic areas in the country. Those areas would be designated by the governors of the states, not those of us in Washington, because Lord knows, people in Washington cannot define poverty in North Charleston, South Carolina, or Simpsonville, South Carolina, or someplace in Arkansas or Iowa. That has to be done by people closer to the challenging areas themselves. And so the governors were given the power to designate within their states the areas that are considered by the low-income areas. Probably 3/4 of those areas are majority minority in most states, not all states. And but at the end of the day, what's happened since the creation of those zones, we gave two incentives to investors. One was a 5-year investment. You would get a 10% step up in your basis. A 7-year investment, you get a 15% step up in your basis. That is attracted into the opportunity zones nationwide, somewhere near $70 billion of commitments and investments in the poorest areas of our country, leading to a 20% increase in property values, with over 60% of the people living in opportunity zones owning their own property. So that's one of the ways that you actually create equity, is seeing those property values go up. Number two, it saw wage growth go around 8% versus the average in our country during those years was around 3.2%. And then finally, we saw access to opportunity because we saw more entrepreneurs creating jobs in opportunity zones than we saw before. So wage growth was up, property values was up, and the good news is gentrification was under 5% for those 7 years that we've had opportunity zones. It expires next year, so we're going to have to go back to the drawing board to get the next round of opportunity zones available for the market from my perspective.
It sounds like from what you're saying that everything that you just laid out, that you feel like this has worked. I wonder, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, in order to even invest in opportunity zones, you have to use capital gains. And that's where financial education comes into play, right? Because a lot of us have to even have accounts to have capital gains. And so I wonder, how do you make sure that the average person or the average entrepreneur is able to invest if they don't even have privilege or even understand that process?
Yeah, we've had a ton of events around the country. As a matter of fact, this is one of those bipartisan coalitions I put together during the rollout of the opportunity zones. I went across the country. I did an event in D.C. with Mayor Bowser. She and I went into Ward 7, Ward 8, and did an opportunity zone event where we had over 400 folks show up. And we talked about the incentives that the city was laying on top of the national framework of the opportunity zones. We've seen that happen throughout the country. I was in South Carolina, Rock Hill, South Carolina, with a good friend of mine who's a Democrat mayor, John Geddes, in Rock Hill. And he said because of opportunity zones, he's seen the first affordable housing come back to the city in more than 3 decades. So what we did was we did another event there. I brought in minority investors, including TI and many others, to have a roundtable discussion to make sure that our community understood the advantages, the challenges, and the real-time opportunities being presented through the opportunity zones. We did that 4 or 5 years ago. We had investors around the country. We had Bishop Jakes working in Georgia with opportunity zone legislation, working in the area to create more affordable housing. So we've seen an uptake of folks coming across the country looking for ways to get invested in there. But the good news is opportunity zones and having a qualified opportunity fund only requires one person with a capital gains tax burden who wants to reduce that burden. That one individual can create their own qualified opportunity zone fund. But the advantage was you have to stay for the long term. I don't want running and gunning. I don't want you coming into community, make a couple of dollars and running back out. All the incentives required a 5-year or longer investment, and getting that information out to the community is one of the things that we worked on through the seminars, the events, the meetings, and then a national rollout that happened in 2018, 2019, 2020. We're on the tail end of the opportunity zone, so we're going to have that kind of rollout again, so more people will have more information to make the right decision to reinvest in the community they come from.
What are your thoughts on what we can do to improve the K through 12 education system and to then eventually make college more affordable for people here in the United States?
Yeah, one of the things that we should be looking at very quickly is, I said this when I was running for president, I said this on the south side of Chicago. I was there with a pastor named Corey Brooks, preaching at his church. And I focused on the fact that everybody in the country, save people living in poverty, have quality education options on the table. If you're the richest Americans, you send your kid to the premier private school you can find. If you are middle income or affluent Americans, you choose the neighborhood with the best schools and then you move into those neighborhoods. It's only the poorest Americans who do not have quality K through 12 education. One of the fastest ways for us to improve that is to allow for some form of school choice to be a part of the education apparatus in our poorest areas. The good news is 72% of African American parents, 68% of Hispanic parents, about 80% of Asian parents, and overall 82% of blue collar parents all agree with some form of school choice, whether that's charter schools, private schools, some hybrid of public schools, parochial schools. Giving the parent more choices will give the kid the best chance to succeed in life. And that is the fastest way for us to improve the plight of K through 12 education. Classic example, before she passed away, Senator Feinstein and myself, Cory Booker, and Senator Ron Johnson, 4 of us, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, worked on school choice through the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program that's been around for decades. We 4 of us took that on as a way of extending the life of it. And we've seen tremendous success through those charter schools in DC. We have some New York City has some strong charter schools called the Success Academy. What we've seen in both of those examples is that the graduation rate for those kids from high school is over 90%, comparatively speaking, with between 48 and 54% for the non-charter school students. Number one. Number two, college attendance is about 60% higher, comparatively speaking, and the grades obviously reflect that as well. So that's a fast way for us to get there. On the higher education, I spent 10 years on the education committee, having been the kid who was struggling in high school. I'm sure you guys all graduated cum laude. I graduated thank you laude. Someone had to be at the bottom of the 50%. That was where I found my unhappy self. But one of the things I learned along the way was, if we're going to improve the opportunities of higher education, then we have to look at community education as a real alternative. So in South Carolina, Tennessee, and many other states, you can get your first 2 years of college paid for free. Go to a community college, and then in those states, your college credits transfers to Clemson University, or if you're a smarter person like me, Carolina Gamecocks. Since I'm a fan, you can go there as well. To my Clemson fans, I'm sorry, y'all have too many national championships. I just had to put a plug in for the Gamecocks. So you can go to some of those schools and get a really good education and pay half the price for your 4 years of education. Second thing you can do is look at what we've done for HBCUs. When we were in the midst of COVID, we canceled the debt, led by myself and others on the team. We've canceled $1.4 billion of HBCU debt, and then took it to the highest level of funding in the history of the country and made that funding permanent. Because one of the things I recognize is, if you want to focus on making a profit, and that has to be a part of the deal looking forward for our community specifically, you have to make sure that the kids are lifelong learners. And those kids who are coming from disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged schools, have access to the type of training to get up to speed, so that you can then have 4 good years of quality education. And so we focused attention on some of those institutions that felt a part of their mission was helping the underserved. And so we focus on that. So those are 2 really good ways of reducing the cost of education in our nation long term. But let's just be honest. The person who graduates from school today has about $35,000 of college debt. $35,000 of college debt translates into about $2 million of additional lifetime income. That translates into a deal I would say yes to if I couldn't do it any other way.
So, okay. So let's talk about this election, right? And the majority, not all, but the majority of people that listen to our program are Black people, right?
Right.
And the majority of Black people are going to vote Democrat historically, and they probably will vote Democrat this year, right? And they are very concerned. A lot of people are very concerned with the Republican Party's extremely conservative agenda. It seems like Project 2025 has become a lightning rod on social media. The Supreme Court has taken an extremely conservative turn, and we've seen some interesting decisions as far as, even with the private equity firm owned by Black women, and they were the Freedom Fund. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that case or not, but that was something that we covered on this channel. We heard that Donald Trump talking about immunity for police officers across the board. I want to let you speak on the concerns that Black people have for the Republican Party.
Well, I can't speak to all the concerns that anybody has about any party. I can speak to some of the issues and the challenges that I have tried to address as just a person who understands the plight of the poor, having been one. Not all Black people are poor, so I can't pretend to speak for all Black people or speak to the issues of all Black people. I can, however, speak to the issues of those of us who've had a similar experience or a similar experience growing up as I have. In 2016, 2017, I gave 3 speeches on police reform and the necessity of it. It happened right after the Walter Scott shooting in 2015, where African-American guy in North Charleston, South Carolina, about 2 or 3 streets away from where I used to play and run around, was shot in the back by a law enforcement officer who said that the situation was completely different than actually turned out when we saw the video. So I went to work on trying to provide $100 million of additional funding for body-worn cameras so that we would have the actual picture of what happened. I said then, and I'll say it again, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth 1,000 pictures. And so while Walter Scott and I were not related, that situation has played out too often around the country. And I wanted to have an opportunity to address that. And the most effective way to address that, frankly, is through providing more body-worn cameras from my perspective. Second thing I did was give a speech in the line of 3 speeches about the fact that I had, as an African-American man, I've been talking about this since my county council days 20 plus years ago, about DWB. We all know what that means, driving while black. And I had been stopped 22 times in 20 years, 4 times as a senator, just driving while black, doing nothing wrong. Simply, I mean, I have sped before, but I wasn't speeding these times. And so wanted to lay out that the concerns and the issues that you hear raised around the country are real issues that we needed to address. I went around my state with a Congress member and met with African-American leaders and law enforcement leaders to bring the communities together so that we could start solving the problems. I gave a third speech about the necessity of police reform and worked on it for 5 years, getting about 85% of the way there before folks no longer wanted to finish the negotiations. As it relates to qualified immunity, which is an issue that you brought up, I'm a person who believes that if you understand the difference between qualified immunity and law enforcement officers that break the law, that we saw the law enforcement officer who shot the African-American female in the face arrested for murder. What you'll see is that the transformation that we've seen in the last 10 years has been strong, powerful, and positive, not complete. And so working on the issue of more justice in our justice system, I've oftentimes spoken those speeches about having the thumb or foot, or frankly, a whole body on the scales of justice, and how our community has consistently had paid the price for that inconsistent application of the justice system, and the necessity of improving it is something that I've worked on for the last 7 years, maybe 9 years at this point. And the same thing after the Mother Emanuel church shooting. And so I look at those issues, and I think sometimes if you're only watching a single channel, if you're only getting your information from one source, you don't actually see the evidence that there is a bipartisan coalition working on behalf of the issues that confront, impact negatively our community. I'd say that second point I'd say is that when you look at the economic realities that we face, Republicans have done a really good job. Frankly, I wrote the personal side of the 2017 tax code, and one of the things I focused on specifically within that tax code was the importance of making sure that monthers like mine, who work 16 hours a day, 5 days a week, just to keep the lights on most of the time, put food on the table most of the time, would have more of her resources to spend on her family. We reduced in 2017 the single mom's taxes by 70% on the federal level. We increased the child tax credit by 100% from $1,000 to $2,000 at that time. We kept in place all the requirements necessary for work, because I think work is a very good thing and necessary for long-term success and viability in this society. I'd also add to that, we took a look at, there were really no cuts to any of the support programs, but we did find that by cutting taxes, the average family received over $4,400 of their own money back in lower taxes and more opportunities. That combination led to the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the country for African Americans, the first time under 6%. And so I think we could tell a very strong story about how the Republican Party has done a very good job of addressing some of the challenges that are being faced by the African American community and minorities throughout the country. I don't think that the oxygen to hear that conversation has been available more often than not. I love having a debate about the underlying issues that we face as a country, not red or blue, but just typically green or justice. And when we have that kind of debate, that's a debate I like to show up for, because we have something, at least I have something I can tell. And the more we hear the whole story, as opposed to the clips that have been snipped to fit into the narrative, the caricature that we make of elected officials, the better off we will be on making decisions about our future and how we get there with more resources, more justice, and more opportunity.
Yeah, those are some of the issues, and I wonder. I mean, they are American issues, but at times it may not feel right. You said like some of these things are done bipartisan, but it may not feel that way based on narrative. I wonder, as a Black Republican senator, I believe the only one, do you feel a responsibility or a weight to make sure that these issues are sought by the party, or is this something that is naturally, as American politicians, this is something that everybody universally feels? Even in terms of DEI, which is one of the things that we didn't just bring up, but another thing that we're seeing repealed, and again affecting us directly. Your thoughts around that and the responsibility that you play in it?
Yeah, I think most people misunderstand who I am and what I represent in public office just because they haven't had a lot of time paying attention to me on a non-biased channel. You guys are giving me an opportunity to speak. You can debate the issues, and I love that because that's something that I yearn for. I thirst for the opportunity to have a serious discussion about what actually leads to progress in our country. I've said this 1,000 times. I believe it's true. Very consistent with Jeremiah 1:5, that Jeremiah was made to be a prophet before he was ever in his mother's womb, that he actually had a destiny and a future he was hardwired for, not predestined, but certainly he was hardwired for. And in the same vein, I see myself in that same vein, in that God made me Black on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a characteristic he just threw on with more melanin in my skin. He made me Black on purpose. And I think if we understand that, then we understand that every single characteristic that the Lord gives us should be used to his glory, including the color of our skin. And we should not see that as an exclusive opportunity, but we should see that as an inclusive opportunity to make the whole better because of every single component part of that chain. And so I do feel that I have been given the responsibility by the Lord to represent all of who I am, and to do it not in an exclusive environment, but to make it a part of the whole. And that's what I try to do. I've been the voice within the party I've had that experience. I've lived that life. I've had the chance to understand the pain and the challenges that so many of us have had to endure. And if you haven't been that person, you don't fully understand those challenges. And I can't pretend to understand the challenges of other people either. But I do understand what I've had to go through to get to where I am. And so opening that door of understanding has been a part of the blessing that God has bestowed upon me. Now, there's only 3 Democrats who are African Americans as well in the Senate. So the one on my side, 3 on the other side, and they just got 3 about 6 months ago, the 3rd person. And so the challenge of progress is one that we should all bear the responsibility of. But I will say this, and this may not be the most popular thing I've said. I've oftentimes said that for 190 years, African Americans have been carved out of the free market system known as the American Free Enterprise System. So it means only for the last 60 years have we had access to it, and not always full access to it. So understanding that means that as a small business owner, my life economically was changed. My mother's life, my family's future was changed when I started my own business and became fairly successful at that. I want to major in finance, minor in race, because too often, too many of our elected officials have had only one responsibility, and that's to look towards the government as the only solution to deal with the issues being confronted by our community. That as a single-minded approach is one that only leads to failure long term. We should understand the important role that government plays in solving some of the problems. But if we don't, since we've had an opportunity to be carved into free markets and capitalism, if we don't figure out this free market system and figure it out that there are only 3 ways to create wealth in this country: real estate, equity position in the marketplace, starting a small business and becoming successful. If we don't understand that, then we won't see the tide change, because today's tides will be changed not first by government, but first by resources.
I know in the past you were favorable on some of President Trump's economic policies in light of the most recent loss. If you could reflect, are there things you think he could have done better with the economy that could have been more favorable for African Americans and a general United States public?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, my man. I say this: in 2019, when we went into the COVID in 2020, one of the reasons why we were able to, believe it or not, be the leading economy in the world through COVID and even coming out of COVID was because we had the strongest economy going into COVID. So I actually celebrate the success that we had going into COVID in 2019, when I think it's a really good chance to reflect on 3 years of President Trump's leadership economically. There's no doubt that one must conclude, at least from my perspective, we can always disagree, he created 7 million new jobs in that time, that era. And 2/3 of those jobs went to women and minorities. It wasn't just African Americans who saw the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the country. Hispanics did as well. Women did not. They saw a 70-year low, but not the lowest. Wages at the bottom grew faster than wages at the top. That is an unusual reality, driven by the ability to open up a more inclusive economy that I helped design, frankly. And I take a lot of personal pride in being the leading Republican on the banking committee now, and having been on the finance committee and given the authority to write the personal side of the tax code for the Senate side. And so the success that I like to celebrate, the success that I'm intimately familiar with, the HBCU funding, that came through President Trump. The canceling of HBCU debt came through President Trump. The permanent funding for the first time, not done by a former president, but done by President Trump during that time. Certainly, I brought many of those issues to him, including opportunity zones. But those things were successes that we saw. And frankly, if you look back at the statistics and the polls from the African American community, not about President Trump, but about the state of play economically at that time, you'll see very consistently that our community was celebrating a lot of the resourcing that we saw coming in. And we've seen the exact opposite since 2021, when we saw inflation raging so high that the average family is today still paying $1,000 more per month for the same basic necessities that they were experiencing up until 2020, into 2020. And so I think when you see the comparison, it's kind of hard to argue around the success of those years that we had. You can talk about a lot of other issues, but economically and frankly, the first time we saw criminal justice reform pass was a coalition of like-minded thinkers, to include President Trump's team, that allowed us to finish the First Step Act to try to break what is one of the most challenging and persistent problems in the criminal justice system, which is recidivism. Recidivism on the federal level is over 70% in 5 years, which means that the communities where the returning citizen formerly incarcerated is going to will be in greater jeopardy if we don't understand the 3 primary challenges of those who are incarcerated: mental health issues, employment issues, and education issues. By addressing those 3 things in the First Step Act, you see the ability to break the back of recidivism, which means fewer crimes committed when the returning person goes home, and healthier, more progressive community at large. And so those were some of the successes that we could not get done until we had someone willing to go the extra mile on those issues. And so I think from a policy standpoint, whether it's criminal justice reform, whether it's economically, whether it's education, 3 of the major landmarks that suggest success within a community, i.e. community we call America, not just the African American community, we saw tremendous strides in the right direction.
As a quick follow-up, you don't think that the retaliatory tariffs were a mistake that ended up hurting farmers and businesses at scale? I'm not trying to back into the corner, but I think if we're going to be fair on the positives, we do have to highlight there was a misstep there, and that put a lot of pricing issues on businesses at large here in the States over the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, I see your point. I can't dispute the fact that tariffs have an impact, and sometimes even you can consider them a negative impact on the community writ large, without any question. I would say that the tariffs that were put in place, specifically the 301 tariffs that were put in place on China, I would say one of the things that it resulted in was China having to buy another, I think the number is, I'll check it when we get off the air and I'll send it to you if I'm wrong. It's about $250 billion of additional agricultural supplies from America, whether it's the vegetables, the fruit. So one of the things that we saw was they lie, cheat, steal to include our intellectual property, and then they flood our market with really inexpensive things that don't always work that well. It's very similar to their Belt and Road projects that they sent throughout the poorest parts of the world, to include South America and Africa. And now those projects that they funded are now having so many failures and flaws that those governments that they sunk into so much debt are now coming out against those very projects that they were thankful for at the beginning. So I don't really have a problem with the 301 tariffs that were put in place. And frankly, President Biden actually kept the tariffs in place as well. And so I think they've had a small impact on the average consumer in America. But we have seen, however, that has had an impact on the consumers in America is the inflationary effect that's happened after the 2020 election, and the $1.9 trillion of first spending bill that came out of Congress under President Biden. I think it was Larry Summers, who was an economist who worked for President Obama, who said at the time, passing a $2 trillion COVID relief package with only 1% going towards COVID vaccines and less than 10% towards COVID healthcare. That meant $1.7 trillion of spending. And Larry Summers, a great economist on the left, said this is going to be disastrous for America's economy. And then two other economists from the Obama era came out and said this is a bad decision that will lead to the worst inflation that we've seen in a generation. Now, of course, all the economists on the right agreed with the sentiments as well. And what we've seen since then has been a loss of spending power of around $28,000 for the average family, which only cripples the kind of households that I grew up in, because 60% increase in the price of gas is not a problem for my mother at the time. That would be an absolute all-out crisis for her. And so when you compare the tariff conversation to the inflation conversation, they're not even close in impact on the poorest Americans.
As far as on international policy, and this is a bipartisan issue because both Democrats and Republicans are both in line with this. So $20 billion in aid to Israel a few days ago, probably over $100 billion over the course of since October, right? And a war that is extremely unpopular globally and domestically as well. And a lot of Americans just don't understand why so much money is being sent overseas, specifically to Ukraine and Israel, when there's issues here in the country with infrastructure, with student loans, whatever. So why, and 40,000 people in Gaza killed, women, children. Why is it so imperative that we continue to fund this effort in the billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when there's so many issues in America?
You know, that's a good question. I'd say October the 7th, last year, 2023, when you saw Hamas go into Israel and rape mothers and daughters in front of their parents and in front of their siblings, cutting off the arms, shooting in the head at point blank, innocent folks doing nothing. When you saw the babies put into stoves and burned alive.
But the babies put in the stone, we had RFK Jr. I don't know if that's actually accurate. I don't know if the babies in the stoves is accurate. Okay. We don't need to paint that narrative, but you can I think you can make the point without putting the babies in the stove.
Man, you cannot actually, from my perspective, you cannot understand the response if you don't understand the deed. It's impossible. I think it's impossible to understand the response I have to why I gave the speech on police reform if you haven't gone through those experiences. So trying to paint that picture in 20 minutes of speaking on the floor of the Senate was necessary for me to say that people like me who've gone through what I've gone through have the kind of visceral response that we have to situations. And so I'm simply painting the picture as real as it is. But that's not just the whole picture, because October 7th was a critical day in the lives and the reality of those in Israel. It was also a critical day for America as well. We know without any question that the chief sponsor of terrorism, the number one sponsor of terrorism on the planet is Iran. We know that Hamas trained some of their fighters in Iran, who says that their objective is to get rid of little Satan and then turn their attention to big Satan, which is us. We know that Hamas in their founding documents have said that it is their desire to eliminate every Jew on the planet, genocide, and turn more attention to us. We know that the coalition of evil in the Middle East, Hamas, Hezbollah, and others, Iran, have two primary focuses. One is Israel, and the second is America. So our response and Israel's response, being shoulder to shoulder and sending resources over there, is the kind of response you have when you know that you too are the target. In Ukraine, I'd say this very clearly, that the NATO charter that suggests, well, that doesn't suggest, requires us to respond, Article 5, when any of our allies within that coalition are targeted. Obviously, Ukraine is not a NATO ally, but they are surrounded, contiguous with NATO allies. Therefore, if there is an incident that happens in Poland, that means that Article 5 kicks in and our troops are going into a war zone. Two brothers who both served in the military. I got to tell you, whatever I can do to eliminate that as a possibility is something that I think is in our long-term best interest. So providing Ukraine with the resources to decimate and degrade Russia's military is in America's best interest. We know that Putin's objective is to reconstitute the old USSR, which includes our NATO partners like Estonia and many others. And so if we're going to have the kind of response that reduces the likelihood that we're going to have American blood spilled in that part of Europe, Eastern Europe, one of the most effective ways to do that is to reduce the ability of your enemy to respond. And we've done that. I think we've done that quite effectively. And you're right. This is a bipartisan coalition of folks who disagree with me vehemently, Republicans and Democrats. I would just suggest that if you study war at all, you come to the conclusion that Putin's design doesn't stop with non-NATO allies. It requires him to attack the weakest parts of our coalition to see what our response is. And frankly, I think it's one of the reasons why early on you saw even President Biden's initial response was to try to get Putin not to cyber attack these specific areas. I wouldn't have given Putin the list, by the way, but he said to try not to attack these areas of our economy because it would require us to be more aggressive towards Russia. That kind of weakness only invites and encourages more conflict. If you want to reduce conflict, at least in my neighborhood, and what I've seen around the world is very similar, is you can have peace if you're strong. You do not get peace if you're weak.
That's true. But just one follow up because,
yes, sir.
Okay, so we're allies with Israel and Ukraine. I get it. But let's talk one at a time. Israel, right? So we're giving them hundreds of billions of dollars. And you referred to it, the atrocities that was committed on October 7th. Yep. Since then, over 40,000 people have been killed, mainly women and children. They're bombing hospitals, they're bombing schools, and this is they've been condemned internationally, right, from the United Nations, reputable organizations, saying they're committing war crimes, right? And there's members of the Israeli government that have been on record to say that they want to eliminate the whole entire Palestinian population, not just Hamas, right? And then even on the West Bank, we see aggression. We see Palestinians getting kicked off their land. We see them being terrorized as well. So at what point do we say, okay, one life is equal to one life, right? So two wrongs don't make a right, right? And if we're complicit in atrocities being committed, at some point, if I'm giving somebody money, I'm kind of empowered to tell them, I'm going to give you this money with this stipulation. If you don't follow this stipulation, I'm not going to give you money anymore.
Let's retract. Yeah.
And it seems like they're not following any stipulations at all, and we just keep giving them money.
Well, Hamas has said very specifically that Palestinians make good human shields. Hamas has specifically hidden their weapons and hostages in the most vulnerable areas of Palestinian life. Hamas has specifically used the tunnels to hide weapons under schools and hospitals and in neighborhoods. Hamas has specifically kept the hostages in neighborhood homes. Their leadership has specifically said that the Palestinian women and children are good shields. They have no conscience as it relates to how they engage in this terror event. And so when you have the weapons of mass destruction and you have the hostages hidden in neighborhoods, Israel has very specifically been going into neighborhoods, house to house to house, trying to designate, target, and provide leaflets to people, say, leave the areas, because they know what Hamas.
But they're bombing refugee. If you bomb a refugee camp, if you bomb a hospital, and you bomb a school, that's not responsible. If you bomb, you tell people to go into a refugee camp, and then you bomb the refugee camp with people you told. This actually really happened in real life. So that's a narrative. I don't think that narrative is true. And I think that is, I just think that is an irresponsible narrative for people to tell, because how can you, where can they go for shelter? They've bombed every single place in the 2 square mile radius of Gaza. So where are they going to go? The sea?
We can disagree on this issue, but I can provide you with report after report after report, not from right or left, but from any news source you want, to specifically see that Hamas has used Palestinians as shields with their lives on the line, knowing that was their goal. I can prove to you and provide. I'll get it to you at the end of the show if you like, where you can see the hospitals and the schools where they put the weapons. That's just what they do, and that is not a debatable part of the conversation. There are parts we can debate, but there are some parts that cannot be debated, and it cannot be debated where they plant their weapons in the most vulnerable places, because they're willing to expend or level their own people to achieve their objective of genocide. That's just what they do.
Okay, so you said that this conflict is in the best interest of the American people, but wouldn't American citizens be the best interest of the American government, right? When we're talking about affordable healthcare, when we're talking about education reform, when we're talking about all these issues, housing that exists here, wouldn't the funding be more or beneficial for the people that are actually here? I mean, it makes it tough to see this, especially from people who are just getting educated on the political process and government spending, when they're seeing millions and billions of dollars spent elsewhere, knowing the immediate needs here. How do you explain that to a voting population?
Well, I can tell you that. Well, what I would first say is that there's a bipartisan coalition that's sending the money over to Israel right now. It's not a Republican event, not a Democrat event. This is an American event led by the President of the United States, who I think is delivering the resources too slowly, frankly, but he's delivering the resources right now without any question. So the hundreds of billions of dollars that we're talking about that's been sent to Israel has been sent to Israel over 15 years. In the last aid package, it was about $26 billion. I think it was. Actually, it was $14.3 billion specifically, I think, designated for Israel, and then additional resources have been put on top of that. But where we get the $100 billion plus numbers, the $3 billion that we've been sending to Israel for more than a decade. You add all that together, so you get way over the number. But the point is a simple one. That there is a bipartisan coalition, starting with this administration, that has been sending resources to Israel, because we understand that being an ally means you don't turn your back away from your ally in desperate need. I have lots of issues with the administration, slowness of the resources, lots of issues. But at the end of the day, let's not miss the fact that this is a bipartisan coalition who's been committed to making sure that, at least defensively, I think we should be there offensively as well, but defensively, that we are there with our ally Israel specifically. And so I don't think that there's any way to turn that into a partisan issue whatsoever. I think that the Democratic National Convention that starts today will have a different, they're going to have 20,000 protesters out there who disagree with the bipartisan coalition, who are sending the resources over to Israel right now. So I do think that this is a longer conversation as it relates to financial assistance. But I want to bifurcate the conversation, because the truth of the matter is that the challenge that we see today on affordable housing is one that we can address today. The cost of a closing is up almost 400% in just less than a decade. Well, take a look at why that is. And what you'll find very quickly is that the regulatory burden for a house to close is significantly high. Reducing that red tape, reducing the regulatory burden of a closing is one of the fastest ways to actually have more people owning their own homes and building equity in America. Second thing I'd say is that the inflationary reality of what's happened to the cost of every component of a house, to include labor, is sky high in the last 3 years. This is something from left or right, from economists on the left to economists on the right, will say without any question, we've seen a significant explosion in the cost of housing because of inflation. We've seen a snarling of the supply chain through the transportation challenges that we've all witnessed real time. And so these aren't debatable issues, but they aren't, you can't conflate all the issues into one. America has the resources, but what we have to do is depend more on those who actually are in the business of building homes and creating opportunities than we do on the government. When the government steps in to try to make the housing projects, the housing developments increase, what we've seen very consistently is the exact opposite. And the last 3 years has been very telling on the fact that most people at the bottom economically are struggling more now than they were just 4 years ago. And most of that has to do with the inflationary effect, whether it's housing, food security, healthcare. We've seen an explosion of the loss of resources, not an increase in resources, even after giving cash away in the first bill in 2021. The result of that cash giveaway was inflation that actually exceeded the amount of cash given to families. If you're not actually building equity through one of the 3 areas I talked about earlier, it is very, very difficult to keep up in this current environment. There's a reason why we are now sitting on over $1.1 trillion of credit card debt, a 48% increase in household debt since 2021. It's called inflation. A 21 almost 22% increase in credit card balances since 2021. It's called inflation. When you're spending an additional $1,000 a month in income and you have not seen that increase in your wages, it's a costly reality. And the way that people have been trying to make it is by extending the credit card to do so. And we came out of COVID with more money in the bank. Americans have more money in the bank than at any other time in recorded history. They've just spent that balance down because of the disaster of inflation brought to us by government overspending.
So what is the party's plan to bring down inflation? Because we had quantitative easing for 12 or 13 years. We can't go back to a zero interest rate environment. I understand the inflation issue, but let's say if President Trump is in office, what is the plan for the party to level things out to make them fair? If that's your argument.
Yeah, I think it's the short answer is that if you look at so instead of saying what he should do in the future, let's take a look back at the past to see if it worked or not. So in 2016,
but it's not to cut you off, but it's a different set of circumstances. We have 35 trillion in overall debt.
Yep.
You said 1.9 in credit card debt. Housing is up probably 3x from 2016.
Too much.
So what may have worked back then may not work now or in the future over the next 4 or 5 years.
It might not
be fair.
Yeah, so I think if you look back to the 1930s and you look at the Mellon tax cuts, one of the questions you ask yourself is, did they work? Did it stimulate the economy? The answer is yes. If you look at John F. Kennedy's tax cuts in the 1960s, did it stimulate the economy? The answer is yes. If you look at the 1980s and look at Ronald Reagan's tax cuts, did it work? The answer is yes. If you look at Bill Clinton's adjustment along with Bush on the capital gains tax, did they work? The answer is yes. So I wouldn't just go back to 2016 because you're right. If you just use it as a bellwether year, then you're just kind of, you might be trying to cook the books a little bit. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm just suggesting that if you look at what happened before was COVID, and what happened to the rates, what happened to income, what happened to wage growth. It may be indicative of what might be working in the future, if in fact the same model that was used in the 1930s, the 1960s, the 1980s, and the 1990s, and frankly even the early 2000s, all produced the same outcome, which was more actual money in the pockets of the individual, who then helped stimulate the economy without doing it artificially, versus trying to do it artificially through government spending. And so the real question is, if you want inflation to come down, what you actually have to have is production growth in the private sector. If you don't have production growth in the private sector and you only have government stimulated growth artificially, that leads to high inflation. And so the net results of the passage of the 2017 tax cuts over the next few years was inflation came down to 1.4% versus where we saw spike because of artificial spending to 9% in June, July of 2021. And it's had to wrestle its way down, but all those price increases have been embedded in the economy since then. So looking forward, I think the best path forward for us is to stop spending artificially from the government and start having more confidence in the private sector. That means having more resources in the private sector. A classic example is that currently we're fighting, as you I'm sure know, over the Basel III endgame proposal, which would park more capital on the sidelines and less capital to be loaned for mortgages, for cars, and for entrepreneurs. That net effect will be a slower growing economy, which means it'll be harder to recover. So when you take that kind of regulatory burden and red tape off the sidelines and put those resources back into the economy, what you'll see is that effective stimulative policies will lead to a stronger growth in the private sector and ultimately the reducing of inflation for all Americans. That has played out for more than 7 decades the same way, and I believe it'll play out again in 2025 if we have someone who actually focuses on reducing inflation by increasing production and activity in the private sector, as opposed to depending on the government to produce what it's never done before.
Senator Scott, I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And then I'll give you, you don't have to answer this question, but I just want to give you the opportunity because, like I said, our audience, a lot of people was triggered when in Republican National Convention, you said that, I'm paraphrasing, America's not a racist country. And
yes,
this is a black audience that you're speaking to, right? And it was triggering to a lot of black people. Yep. And I probably don't have to explain why it was triggering, right? So do you want to clarify that statement before we leave?
Well, let me just, I'll say what I said then too. And remember, Joe Biden said America's not a racist country. Kamala Harris has said America's not a racist country. When I say it, somehow it's shocking.
But you're a black man. Black. You're a black man.
But Kamala Harris is a black female. So I'm just going to say this, that she and I both have said America's not a racist country. What I said as a precursor in 2021 to what I said again in 2024 is I have been the victim of discrimination. I understand that prejudice is real. America, by and large, is not a racist country. It does not mean that we don't have racists in the country. It does not mean that we don't experience prejudice. It means that the country and the systems of our country have been uprooted from its racist past and is today not a racist country. I stand by that. And frankly, I'd love to hear.
Did you say Senator Scott, you said systemically it's not currently?
I do not believe that it is. So I definitely said it's not systemically racist.
The insurance industry was built off of our body.
100%.
I think systemic. I know you have to go, but I mean, when you look at the prison industrial system, when you look at the policing system in America, when you look at the banking system in America, I mean, Bank of America just had to pay billions of dollars in loans last year.
Wells Fargo
last year because that speaks to systematic racism. That speaks to systematic racism. That I'm not saying that every single person in America is racist. I agree with you on that, but there are structures that are put in place that are still to their core,
systematically, and are functioning at a high level systematically.
Well, there's no question that we have prejudice and people who want to employ their racism and discrimination in their business and in their activities. Without any question, that's true. The question is, what is the response when those systems are found? And if you believe that America is racist to the root, you and I will just disagree on that. I just don't. I am a black man who grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, where the Civil War started, who ran for Congress against Strom Thurmond's son and came out successfully. I'm a guy that wrote the legislation that has literally transformed poverty in pockets of our nation, because I understand that given the right tools, we respond as a nation in the right way. So continuing to look for those areas of persistent prejudice is something we should all do. But to suggest that we have a root system that is still completely biased and the overwhelming factor in success in this country is the color of your skin, I just don't see that. I don't believe. I just don't see that happening.
But there's only
there's one other piece. I mean, I'm sorry. I was going to say, you coming from a financial background, Senator Scott, and the access to capital. When we talk about systems, I mean that one feels pretty glaring. No. Well,
listen, it's one of the reasons why I spent the last 9 years working on inclusive economic policy that has done the following. Number one, I have specifically and personally passed legislation and worked on legislation that allows for the credit score to reflect the things that we as a community have been doing all along. We pay our bills on time. We pay the electric bill on time. We pay the phone bill on time. We pay our rent on time, because only 43% of us in the current environment own a home. So most of us are paying rent. And so I wanted to make sure that the credit reporting agencies had all the information of our credit worthiness. That's one of the reasons why I worked on making sure that more people have access to the banking system, when in fact, as high as 16% of us are underbanked or unbanked. I wanted to make sure that we provided the kind of resources and tools to make sure that we had access to the financial system. When it comes to what you guys talk about very often, which is the equity position in the marketplace. We have Gensler and many others, SEC, who want to bring back having to pay for your trades. Access to that requires $0 for your trades. If you want people who have very little resources to be able to buy slices and to get involved in the market, whether it's those issues or whether it's on the housing issue, while myself and some of my friends on the other side have had bipartisan legislation led on financial literacy, so you know and appreciate what it takes to be successful financially in this country, what it takes to not only earn your degree, but what the value of that degree will be. Having legislation that works in that direction is things I've worked on and been successful. The creation of financial football that is being taught in high schools and colleges, partnering with the NFL and Visa to provide those type of so that kids can find fun learning about resources. These are things that have happened, but not just my watch. These things have happened under my watch in the last 15 years. But even before that, we had leaders who were trying to champion the cause of using government as a leverage point. The truth is, at this point, we need finances and financial literacy and resources to be the predominant leverage point. So we may disagree and agree on some of the issues. I can't speak to those things, but I can speak to the ability to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball, so the next generation, which most of you guys are in that next generation, so I'm probably 20 years older than all y'all at the very least, I have more opportunities than I did.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Have a good one.
All right, I'm going to.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. I thought that was a good conversation. We covered a variety of different topics. I think that's important to have different opinion. He didn't really have that too much of it, honestly, to be completely honest with you about it. A lot of the stuff that he said is similar to what the Democrats have said about a few different things. So
gaslighting at the end, though, I'll get triggered, but to say this,
you know what, you know what I respect is that he stood on it. I actually respect it, because of course I don't agree with that at all, not even a little bit. But if he would have backpedaled and tried to wiggle his way out of it, I would have even respected it less. the fact that he's like, yo, no, this is just my opinion. That's how I feel. I mean, I can't make somebody.
We need more fact or less opinion. Let's say the expert opinion for math. Shout to math.
Yeah,
we need expert facts. Like,
I mean,
what?
Well, the good thing about this is that's why in politics you get elected based off of people's votes, right? So people can say how they feel. It's not like private company where we can't control who runs Apple, right? We can't control who runs Apple, and we can try to boycott it if we don't like it, but that's not like, in an election, you get to vote somebody in, you get to vote somebody out, you get to vote a party in, you get to vote a party out. It's up to you. So it's like, you say what you want to say, and then it's up to the public to be educated on, okay, this is how this person thinks. I agree with this. I don't agree with this. And as a result, I'm going to use my vote or my donation to go for that person or go against that person.
I don't think Trump would even say that America's not a racist country.
Oh, Trump definitely would say that for sure.
That it's not.
He probably has already. I'm sure he's already said that.
You heard him yesterday until he said that he looks better than.
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
I seen that, man.
I love it.
You got your beard. You got your beard going, man. Got the oils. Got the tan. Got the lineup. Got the Steve Harvey. Got the Steve Harvey.
Good boy back. Got to come back and laugh at crazy episode.
Ready for InvestFest.
What fabric is that, my brother? What fabric you got?
So
what fabric is that?
That's it.
Egyptian cotton. I'm alive.
Testing the fabrics out.
Yeah, just a couple of swatches.
Little doche, you don't say.
Cool.
Yeah, real quick, changing the vibe up. Got to get back in my lover era. Last week episode of Blackout was crazy.
Oh man, unbelievable.
Yeah. Rashad, what you coming with? Since we talking about fabrics,
with my colorways?
Yeah.
What did I come away with?
Both.
Let's start with what you came away with. No. You know what? Don't do that. Don't do what you came away with. That's for a different show.
For a different show for Blackout. But
that's for a different show.
Listen, I'm gonna say this. I don't mean to cut you. I'm pandering this week though, so tune in. There's gonna be a Red Panda special. We're gonna get back in our lover bag. David Shands, you owe me taxes and reparations when I see you.
Times 30. Times 30.
Boy.
Taxes.
My Lord, what were you doing?
But I'll say this.
Time for the calling segment.
With Tim Scott.
Yes.
I didn't agree with obviously some of the things that he said. I didn't agree with the Israel Gaza situation. I didn't agree with Ukraine.
You're hiding weapons in a refugee camp. That makes no fucking sense.
And even that is like, but the thing about it is this, I don't agree with the last thing he said, obviously. But I will say this, he's an intelligent person.
He's a financial advisor.
Yeah, he's intelligent. He actually made some valid points on the finance side. And he kind of was alluding that this was the first time that he got to really speak in long form as opposed to people just cutting up, sound bites. And I can appreciate that. So I am glad that we had him on because
he stood in the fire. I got to give it to him. Yeah,
no, he did. He did. And he was there for, 50 minutes, at least 50 minutes. So it was a long conversation.
I'm going to add real quick because you're talking about the thing that you did agree with. I think importantly, one of the things, and maybe you were going to allude to it, was the 3 ways that you can make money in this country.
That's a fact.
like that, spot on.
That's what we talk about, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like again,
real estate, stocks, and business.
He's telling you, and you can think whatever you want about him, but look at his history, his career in business prior to politics, successful, and he's telling you the same things we've been telling you.
I think it was a good conversation.
But to not know about the Freedom Fund case.
Did he not know about that?
He said he didn't know.
He didn't know.
Yeah, he said he didn't know.
I didn't even hear him say that he didn't know.
I'm not trying to pile on him. To my social media team, don't clip any of this part up, but how do you not?
Yeah, and that's,
that's the easy way to get around it. I'm not familiar.
Well, that's my thing.
That's my move. Never had no clue. My bad.
No, I don't.
That's my thing with the Republican Party is that me personally, I agree with a lot of the fiscal policies. I disagree with the social policies. It just doesn't. A lot of the social policies are just troubling to me. And the Democrats, I usually agree with the social policies, not all of them. I usually agree with their social policies, but I disagree with the fiscal policies. Like, I'm not a fan of big government. I'm not a fan of extremely high taxes. I'm just not a fan of that. Like, with no apology. Like, I don't want to have to pay half of my money to the government. I don't trust the government enough to give them half of my money. I'd rather do philanthropy on my own. And if I'm gonna give up half of my money, at least I know where the money's going.
The part, I just don't like when politicians they start every conversation with the year of the first term, the first year of the next term. So everything is since 2021. But I'm like, yeah, we're talking about, you can't talk about inflation and not talk about the pandemic and talk about the economy in that sense, right? You can't leave that piece out, right? Because there is no stimulus, there is no free money. Like, these things cause inflation. So to leave those things out of the conversation, and this catastrophic event that has happened once in a century, I mean, that weighs a huge factor inside of some of those arguments.
I just want to know, because 19 Keys, I put the post up. He was like, "Is EYL?" I mean, this was like in jest, but he's like, "Is EYL working for the Democrats?" And then, like, some people like, "Yeah, of course they are. They've been compromised. They're working with the Democrats." So now I want to see. Okay, we have a Republican.
Which one is it? I thought we was Trumpers 3 weeks ago.
You think he was really shocked that he was the first? I'm like, when I saw his eyes when you said it, it was like, what? Like,
I think
You think?
I don't think he was necessarily shocked. I'm sure, like, he probably knows that Black people usually vote Democrat.
He has to. He's the only one in there.
The Democrats usually, move towards Black people. So, I think that. Well, so what's your thoughts on him? Are you positive on him?
I mean, my thoughts on him are the same. I didn't appreciate some of his antics leading up until the convention. When he first told Trump that he loved him for no reason.
He loves him.
The same thing.
It just sounded so crazy when he did it, though. Like, it almost felt unnecessary.
Worse than Kanye's?
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been.
Kanye was a glazed job.
But he ain't tell him to his face. He ain't.
All respect.
He put the hat on. Yeah, it's worse.
Kanye put the hat
on. But Kanye we all know that he's dealing with more than just what meets the eye, right? That we can see that there's issues that are going on. So I don't know what frame of mind Ye was in. And to this day, we still don't know what frame of mind Ye is in. But I'm happy to hear him talk candidly for that long, stand his ground. Like you said, there's some things that we agree on, and some things that we're just not gonna see eye to eye on, and that goes into a lot of context and perspective. Like you said, he is a Black man from Charleston, South Carolina, who won a seat in United States government. Like, that's an achievement in itself, coming from the South, right? And so his experiences and his perspective is going to be a lot different from ours. So I respect that, but like you said, he stood his ground, and so I got to give him credit for that.
Yeah. No, I think, like I said, I think he's a smart guy, man. He made a lot of good points, especially on the economic side. The economic side, I had no problem with anything that he said.
Yeah, I didn't have much issue with that. Oh. The tariffs thing, yeah, maybe, but yeah, for the most part, the economic stuff, cool. It's fair on.
All right. Okay.
Hi, Mom.
Thank you for shopping that accent.
My mom, she turned it on.
Mom, please, sub me out.
Mom, it's what shots for.
You got to have journalistic integrity, man. we got to hear from everybody.
What would be the GDP of America if slavery was not enacted for the time? Like, for those, you get on ChatGPT, what would the GDP of America be if slavery was not the founding product of the country?
I mean, it wouldn't be a country.
Yeah, how do you have a country?
The country was founded on slave labor, and after that, it was continued. Well, it was founded on stolen land, then slave labor, then free labor. Damn near. Because you go through the sharecropping and Jim Crow and all that. And even now to this day, the prison industrial system, and migrants coming and people working undocumented. So, I mean, that's kind of how America was built. It's actually another part of it. So, all right, stolen land, free labor, low costing labor, and then it was a drain pool. This part is actually positive, because one of the brilliant things that America did do was attract talent from all over the world, and that actually helped. We can't leave that out of the situation. So a lot of immigrants came, and that actually did help the situation. And you go to these other countries, and they're not like that. Like China's a monolithic country where everybody pretty much is Chinese. They have some, but it's not. America was built on a very diverse talent pool, which is even more troubling that this anti-immigration stance is being pushed so hard, in my opinion, because that's how we built our country on low-skilled workers and then high-skilled workers as well.
Stolen land from other countries, like New Mexico, Texas.
Oh yeah, well, so that goes back. That's the first thing, stolen land. Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is that, it's interesting how all this stuff comes into play here, because now it's like, okay, there's an anti-DEI. You don't want to, but black people built the country. There's an anti-immigrant, but immigrants helped advance the country tremendously. So it's just interesting how, like, you're anti people that actually helped move this thing forward.
Yeah. What would, if you had to they could probably calculate that, right? Like the cost of the land, right? At that time, so all the land that was never accounted for, a price was paying for that, or lives would pay for that. And then the amount of labor that was done and constructed, landmarks that still stand today.
Absolutely.
What would be the valuation of that? Like the same way they took the valuation of Queen Elizabeth before her passing, how much those castles and what work, Buckingham, the net value of that.
Absolutely.
What would be the value of the architectural structures that were built here and homes that were built here?
I mean, Manhattan was, quote unquote, sold to the Dutch settlers, quote unquote,
New Amsterdam,
in 1626 for goods worth around 60 gullards. The exact value of that now has been debated, but it's approximately equivalent to, anybody want to take a guess?
Present day? Does it start with a T?
No.
Okay.
No.
I don't know. A couple $100 billion?
$24.
What?
60 gunners is worth more than $24.
Ask ChatGPT.
I'm not. Come on, I ain't listening to ChatGPT on this, man. $24.
The numbers are what the numbers are. A steal.
24 cash. Here, take the island. Who's your number one buyer?
It's tough, man. It's tough. Like, we just have to face facts. That's why that triggers me. But I mean, yeah. And also, too, if we're gonna be very honest, this is why most people don't like politicians. No slight against him, but like, it's better just to give an honest, straight answer.
Yeah, no systems is crazy. No systems is crazy. That's just crazy.
Just take real estate. The number one wealth builder in aggregate for the United States of America post-slavery was real estate. You had redlining for 75 years. Still happening to this day.
That's what I'm saying. They're rezoning to this day.
Yeah.
Actively.
Like I said,
and as soon as like all of us got in and learned, I saw a post today. A guy was like, man, as soon as I start getting some money, the cost of everything went up 3x. Then you have DEI. When the founders and CEOs of the major tech companies, go look what Steve Jobs' heritage is. They made Microsoft cancel DEI. But what do I know? I'm just down on YouTube. They got a tan.
Speaking of Microsoft, do you foresee Microsoft facing potential regulatory action that could lead to a breakup similar to what has been discussed for Google?
Not yet. I think they're too valuable right now to be broken up. And I think usually when these monopoly conversations happen, the Microsoft of today is different than when Gates ran it. So not in the next 2 or 3 years. I think if the market cap exceeds a certain price, maybe. But the difference is, I think Microsoft and Apple are too valuable to the overall American economy that if they were broken up, it would send shockwaves throughout our economy. I know they're talking. Say it again.
I was gonna say, it feels like every time one of these mega cap companies gets too big, Department of Justice steps in. Right. Like,
and with Google, you can understand it, but if YouTube spins off and it IPOs, okay, then what? They'll be in a match. Tesla's over with. Get out.
Even just with the Activision deal, like even that was like, hold on. And that might not even work out based on what they've just saying. Some of the things I've seen from Microsoft. But even that, anytime that there's an acquisition, and that's why it becomes so tough, right? Because we can talk about this free cash flow that they have. But what do you know after you buy back stocks, and that's great, right, for retail investors and institutional investors. But at some point, acquisitions come into play, and it's tough to have acquisitions because once you do, they're gonna come knocking. Right, because now even like you said, in the next 2 or 3 years, but let OpenAI continue to expand, let that value grow, let that valuation grow. They have 49%. You can hear them knocking already. I can hear it.
You can, but if you spin out YouTube, every other media company, you're in trouble. Netflix, that valuation drop, Paramount, and it's over with. You're going to be 2B2, right?
2B2.
If Microsoft has to spin out OpenAI and they're publicly traded, that's going to make Microsoft richer. As a result, you're going to create more mini monopolies.
So go with the program.
So all right, this Manhattan thing is interesting. If you actually Google it, every single article that you see is pretty consistent. Most say $24. The highest I've seen is $1,100 of 20. So no, it's pretty consistent. Beads and trinkets and 60 gidlets.
Was sold for
Manhattan for some
the entire Manhattan Island?
Manhattan Island.
Wow. Island, bro.
They said, like I said, the highest number that I've seen is in 2020. The equivalent would be $1,100. But the average on Google is $24. That's what
it'd be present day.
In today's money, it was, and like I said, the idea of sold is relative, right? Because we know a swindler when we see one. We know a swindler.
I don't believe in none of it.
But, Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, was sold for $24.
And now they have a penthouse that's selling for $150 million.
Easily.
One in Central Park, $150 million.
Bro.
Do the math. We'll get it later.
DEI is another form of redlining.
He left that out. I asked him about. I threw that out there. Kind of just went. No looked it, but okay.
They said the current one estimate in recent years, Manhattan's total real estate value is around $3 trillion.
It's 10% of what is owed.
$24.
That's a hell of a return. 24 into 3 trillion.
That was, you said the Dutch, right?
Yes. That's why. Do you know the original name of New York?
New Amsterdam.
Oh, like Harlem. Harlem is a Dutch name.
Oh,
variety of different neighborhoods.
They did in
Go ahead.
Yeah, Kings of New York. That was actually a decent movie with Leo.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, and if you go to it's not One World Trade anymore, but the Freedom, or it's not Freedom Tower, it's back to One World Trade. I think that when you go up the elevator, it shows you the history of it's like one of these LED. It's a huge LED elevator. It shows you the history from I think 1626 up into present day, and then you get off the elevator, you open up and you see present day. It's kind of fly. If you ever been in New York City, I would definitely recommend go checking it out.
Financial capital of the world.
Yeah,
$24. That's insane.
It's a train ride.
Yeah.
And then even with the zero interest rate environment, that I can't blame it all on Bush because there were some other factors that happened. But man, like the devastation that happened from that war and mismanagement of the housing crisis that failed, and Barack had to come in and force them to do the zero interest rate for 12 years to get us back to above. Talk about it on Stock Club. What, like, without that zero interest rate environment, we would have been flat from 99 to 2009. That housing crisis shit was Bear Stearns went under. Like, I don't think people remember how big Bear Stearns was. It was like JP Morgan back in the day.
Lehman Brothers.
Like, bro, what?
99.
2 monumental institutions went under.
Yeah.
But inflation's high now. Oh, okay. But what do I know?
Yeah.
Get your tickets to InvestFest, please, so you can learn how to
InvestFest.
navigate this.
Financial freedom, our only hope. The Democrats going to have to answer some questions too. Like you said,
Big facts.
there's 20,000 people that's going to be protesting in Chicago. They're going to have to answer some tough questions on their foreign policy and on their domestic policy also.
I think the president's speaking. Is he tonight?
I believe so.
Biden?
I think he speaks tonight.
I think tomorrow.
Governor Hochul is today. New York's governor. Yeah.
For anyone who may be watching right now, they're like, okay, with all this doom and gloom, what's the point if the system is rigged? Can we give them a conclusive answer about why you still have to invest despite of the conditions we may face and roadblocks that may be thrown our way?
I mean, it's the only option. Like he said, the only 3 ways to build wealth in this country is real estate, stocks, and business. You notice he didn't say working a job, saving. He didn't say any of that. So at the end of the day, Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. If your goal is to have financial freedom, which people that watch this show, that's usually their goal, then you have to invest. It's the only way. It's the only way to have financial freedom. Now, you're still going to have other issues in life, but this show is focused on financial freedom. So with that being said, that leads me to my next question. Beyond stocks, what are some alternative sources of income for those looking to invest heavily while moving beyond a traditional 9-to-5 job?
I mean, we just hit the nail on the head. You have to build a business or build something that you're best in the world at. I know it's not an answer that everyone loves, but even when we're talking yesterday about networking tips, keep your pitch down to 10 seconds because there's going to be people meeting all day, all night. But when you're looking to build a business, what can you do that someone else in the world is not able to do? You want to enter a field that doesn't have a ton of competition. So like when ChatGPT came onto the scene, they have more competitors now. But for 75 years, they were trying to make something like that. They were the ones that were able to execute it. Google, who dropped the fucking ball, was supposed to have come out with something like this 8 years ago. They didn't do it. What can you build? What resource can you give to your community or to the world that no one else can do? And then you'll get a windfall from there. You have to build a business or help someone build theirs. So going back to the CEO of Starbucks now, his skill set is so valuable that it's worth paying him $113 million in compensation to help resurrect Starbucks from where they are now to where they should be. So be so valuable that you can increase the valuation of a company. That's the only way you have to build a business. Have to.
Ain't no more to it.
That's it.
Can I sneak in these earnings real quick?
And I'll say this, work on your craft every day. I keep stressing this. Be genuine in the people that you meet, but people can feel if you worked on your craft when you're pitching. Like, we'll talk about it, but you're like, hey, what can I do to get better? You guys have the conversation with Nick Cannon's like, hey, does networking matter more or being great at your craft? The answer is both, but if you're not great at it, the connection doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Can you put up points on the board when you get the ball in your proverbial court?
Can you continuously put points up on the board?
Absolutely.
Right.
In a crunch time.
Yeah. It's important because, I mean, each person has a subjective opinion. And so is your message going to be consistent every time? Yeah. Are you going to show up every time the same way?
And the output be consistent.
Yeah. It's important. I was going to say, can we run through some earnings really quickly?
Absolutely.
Since we're talking about obviously investing and creating business. You tell me what you think about these companies. It's a big week for retail. We got Lowe's reporting this week. We got Target, Macy's, TJ Maxx is reporting. We got BJ's, Kava's reporting. Ross, what's your thoughts around retail? I think that they're seeing some uptick.
I'm not going to say uninvestable, but that's not where I will put my first set of cash. If I have some spare cash I don't want to lie and say that they're investable like someone else lied. Shout to him, but Kava I like. Target not so much. And also like, okay, what is the interest rate? This is a great exercise. What is the current interest rate versus what is the profit margin of these companies? Great exercise. So if the profit margin for Target hypothetically is 8% and our interest rate is, I don't want that kind of thin of a margin. BJ's, easy joke. I want to do it. Kava I like though. Ross isn't bad. Ross isn't bad. Too easy. You know what I mean? But
that might be poor.
Ross I like. Kava I like. Who else is on there?
TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx had a rough quarter.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid. Yeah.
You know what I'm interested in seeing? Snowflake.
Who?
Snowflake. They got beat up last quarter so bad. They haven't recovered. Dropped down to 150. I'm interested in seeing that. And then one of the darlings of the pandemic, Zoom.
Remember when they said Snowflake was going to be like the net? No.
Reality set in for them a bit.
Set in, yeah.
Yeah. Didn't quite deliver. Where is it? It's at 130. Whew.
At one point, it was at 398. Ooh, baby. Them
this year was at 232 in February. It was 232. And it took a beating. I think it was after the second quarter earnings report, and it hasn't recovered. So I'm interested to see how they report.
Stock down $108 over the last 4 years.
Yeah,
finito.
Yeah,
unless Buffett going to buy a whole bunch of shares and merge it with Geico, but no.
What do you think about Zoom? You talking about one that at its peak? It's trying to stay around above $60 at this point.
If you're Zoom, who can you sell to? That is a great piece of technology, but has no use case. Like even with that, are more people on Zoom or Instagram Live?
They might have missed the point. They might have missed the mark when to sell.
They should have sold. As soon as they got hot, I would have been making every call, just like the equity company did with Rock Nation. Hey, let's merge real quick. Oh, where you at? Speaking of which, how was your weekend?
Oh, yeah.
But Zoom, uninvestable. Shout to the management CEO, but no.
We have to actually, I'm glad you said this. We have to be fair about this situation. I did speak to Dame Dash, who we reported something that everybody reported last week when it was actually a teachable moment when Rockefeller, Reasonable Doubt, Dame Dash has a judgment to sell Reasonable Doubt, and Jay-Z's lawyer, so it's gonna go on auction, but Jay-Z's lawyer or Rock Nation's lawyer put a statement out saying that whoever buys it is going to revert back to Jay-Z in 2030. Essentially, you're discouraging people from buying it by putting that statement out,
which
right?
Is smart.
For sure. So is that something, because it's like $800,000, right? It's not like it's $800 million, right?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? How do you, would that something that you would do? How do you feel? What do you
get
think?
my honest answer?
How do you, what do you think as far as in the your honest answer? Yes.
What side of the coin is he on?
If
side of truth.
The side of if he was the person
that had the judgment?
No, the other side.
Oh, the person.
So if you're on a judgment, you're not in the position to do anything.
So the person who was going to revert to. Okay, gotcha.
I was actually, because Joseph was talking about buying it, right? I think we should buy them off of Dame and give them to Hove. And put it to bed.
We should do what?
Buy the master off of Dame, friend, and give them to Hove.
Why would we do that?
Relationship.
No, I'm saying, why would you give it? If you buy it, why would you give it?
Well, how much money do you think you'll be able to make off of it in a 6-year period? I think the return on investment on a relationship probably be 10x. If they bought Manhattan for 24 Dutches,
they don't take me as those type of guys though. It's like I'm not
if
sure
it was me buying it flat out, would I to have rights to it for 5 or 6 years? No. Once again, going back to the conversation we had privately, I don't want to make an enemy out of anybody on that side.
Yeah.
So then you don't touch it.
I mean, it's one of these things.
It's uninvestable. By making that statement, he almost gave a declaration of war to say you only have 5 years anyway, or 5 or 6 years. But those 5 or 6 years can be. Lawyers don't even make those statements normally. It's going to revert back to Sean anyway. What?
Yeah. Unless you don't want you don't want equity to go to the person.
So I mean, he I think he's looking at it from a standpoint of he's saying that, and he said this before, like, that the bylaws were changed and the potential sale originally it was supposed to be valued at 20 million, 10 to 20 million. So how does it come to only 800,000? And then putting that statement out actually lowers the value even more to the point where I don't know what the market value is now, or maybe 100,000, maybe, who knows? Like, it's so I guess the question would be, what would be the motive for doing that? I guess that's the mind frame that he would kind of go in. It's like, what would be the motive of somebody doing that other than,
devaluing
to hurt somebody,
to devalue it and then destroy completely? Because if I make it uninvestable or not a wise investment, and it's going to revert back to Jay-Z anyway, it's to drive the buyer's market. No different if you have a condominium. It's like, well, it's contaminated with lead. Of course, you're going to devalue the property for what it could go for.
That's on the sale of it. But if there's a judgment on the other side of it, doesn't that change it? Right? Like, in the sense of if it doesn't sell at that value, right? If the judgment's for 800,000 and now the value of that has gone down to, let's say, if it's 1, there's still 700,000 that needs to be made on that judgment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That hurts him.
Right.
That hurts him by design.
So it's like, I guess he's looking like, why would you want to hurt me more than I've already suffered? Right? Like if you have to pay 800,000 and your only asset that you have could potentially sell for 800,000, that'll get you out the clear. But now if that asset is deemed worthless, you still owe 800,000. So now it just puts you in a pickle.
A different situation. Yeah.
Now you got to try to figure out where you're going to get 800,000 from.
Right.
This reminds me a lot of the Warren Buffett Lehman situation in 2008. I'll say the economy, but as a result, something has to fall apart that I want to fall apart.
So you're saying we should call Jamie Dimon? He got the answer. Let me come save you all.
Yes. Shout to JP Morgan.
So this was put out to lower the valuation so that they could potentially
intentionally
for a cheaper amount, right?
Feels that way.
And if you push all the potential, because I mean, as hip hop fans, once again, there's more people that have money that could pull together. But if you are now looked at as a enemy combatant of that team, no one wants that.
Nobody wants it, and let
me just back away.
Yeah, as a hip hop fan, it just kind of feels like that's that's Jay's. Like
no, you can't say that.
No, I'm saying as a hip hop fan, yes, all 3 of them together make the company, but as a body of work, the writing of the material on that, obviously there's skits in there, but it all feels like that's his.
No, you can't say that. That's not.
If Michael Rubin go buy this album for $100,000 and give it to Hope, I would be so fucking mad, yo.
The body of work that was composed.
That goes back to the
Art of War.
Chill. I ain't say Robert.
That goes back to Irv Gotti and Ashanti, right? Ownership. Mickey Fax told us this. Ownership is rewarded from risk, right? So Irv Gotti put the risk up, right? He put the money up. He frontline. He didn't write the songs. So she like, well, I wrote the music. I deserve. No, that's not how it works.
But that situation is different in the sense that that's CEO artist. This is CEO.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like if you know,
a different dynamic.
If you don't have 100% ownership in it, then You know what I mean? Like you got to figure out how to do that. But ultimately,
He's
gonna get it. He's gonna get it anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying from a hip hop fan, not from a business standpoint. What you're saying, absolutely. I'm just saying as a fan of hip hop.
It's his album.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm just saying, it's a lot of people that have albums that don't own their music.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. That's from the business side. I'm just saying from a hip hop fan. That's why I let with as a hip hop fan, it just feels like that's Jay's.
But a lot of fans felt like Ashanti should have her masters. I didn't agree with that. No, you shouldn't have your masters. No. Why should you have your masters?
I didn't.
I'm paying for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I didn't agree. I didn't agree with that.
Taylor Swift the same thing.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift the same thing. Like, no.
Taylor Swift pulled off the biggest.
I
don't know if y'all seen that documentary. Woo!
Yeah, but
Taylor Swift, she was powerful enough to do it.
Taylor Swift the same thing, but ultimately, it's an interesting case study. It's unfortunate because it speaks to a level of business dysfunction. And these are people that, a lot of people look up to or, had high reverence in regard for their company that they built. So to see it take this fall is tragic, but, it's definitely a learning lesson. But yeah, I think that's obvious that they probably did that on purpose to lower the valuation so that they can come in and buy it for cheap.
Yeah.
That would make sense to me.
Man, that shit gonna be on every soundtrack and 2K and Madden as soon as Hov get it.
Nah, I don't even think he's gonna. I think he just keeps that. He doesn't even license it. Nothing. Nobody can sample. I think he puts that away. Like he's always.
Sotheby's gonna buy that shit for 300 minutes. Something gonna Hov smart, yo.
He talks about it in a way that I feel like he wouldn't even tamper with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. His whole career is just. I just want that back. I just want that back. To have it finally come back, I just think he is. That becomes the grill. That's his grill.
People sample it now. It's going to get sampled. Everybody at work gets sampled. They get sampled. People sample it now.
But he doesn't own it now.
He owns it. He owns 1/3 of it.
Well, he can't make the 100% decision on it.
He can't make a 100% decision when Dane because Big still owns his 1/3.
Well, we'll see.
No, Biggs is still
Biggs is a good grace.
Yeah, Biggs already has his. That's not up for debate unless he buys him out. But
it's a great conversation to have around not having dysfunction, and is dysfunction worth it in the long run? It's better to have good partnership, good relationship. If we own this water bottle together and you really love it, why should I hold it for you? Because now, just in litigation, I can only imagine what Dame is paid. And I wish Dame and Steve Stout and Hov would get their kumbaya moment. I really do, because I hate seeing Black successful men fight like this. But is it worth it to hold on to that one asset to then go through this? But this is how business is done.
Yeah,
if you can't get it back fairly, okay, well, let me demonize and weaponize my platform and power to destroy what this asset is worth to then buy it for little or nothing.
That's a fact.
It happens all the time.
Well,
Jimmy Iovine did it with 50, and 50 was one of the biggest selling artists at Interscope ever over them fucking headphones.
Speaking of 50, get your tickets to InvestFest, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
This is it. Last call. We will see you guys Thursday for registration. Download the InvestFest app.
Please.
Virtual tickets are available, but coming with the right mind frame is going to be a lot of education, a lot of people there. Look to network, have your elevator pitch ready, have your digital business card ready.
Yeah.
Be ready to help people. Ask how you can help people.
Get in the right frame of mind, y'all. It's like that Undercover Boss. You ever watch that show? You never know who you're talking to. You just never know. That's hyperspeed.
You have no clue.
You just never know.
For sure.
Right. You'll see us, obviously. You'll know what, but I'm telling you.
Get your tickets.
Yeah. There's some people that's going to be in the building that are powerful that you have no clue.
That's a fact. And please, we spoke about this last week and it's happened already again. This sweaty palm thing. Can we fist bump, man?
Mike B, I need some driving gloves, please.
I might have to add that to it, man. And if y'all see me wearing a glove, don't this ain't no Mike. This is safety precautions, man. Please.
Yeah.
I have to know.
We did it again.
Monkeypox and COVID flaring back up. You got sweaty palms. Nah, bro.
Exactly. Monkeypox is back.
Hell of a lineup, man. It's gonna be a good one, man. So All right. See you guys tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Joey Crack, Fat Joe.
Yeah, happy birthday, Joey.
Oh, happy birthday to my brother tomorrow. I love you dearly. Appreciate you. Cash up on the way.
Yeah, happy birthday, man. We saw Joe this weekend.
Happy birthday, man. EYL the Mall blackout on Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen.
You're gonna dress
Panda edition.
They're gonna dress something.
Panda. Oh,
I can't believe you said that you could have dated people better.
I'm all you need. All you need is me.
Well, aw. What can you say? Aw. And I'll still get you. You should be happy. What?
That should be the drop. Just
never again.
Me.
I'm just joking. I'm gonna be in lover mode this week.
Oh man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for y'all.
Been real. Let's see you at InvestFest.
Love
David
love,
Shaz, when I see you.
Is on?
No, that's my guy. Checks need to be cut. What was the line of questioning?
With your inquisitive self.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. We out. Peace.